Hi guys! Today I'm going to show you how I made my pocket shawl using just cross stitch with double crochets. For my shawl I used Bernat Blanket Ombre by Yarnspirations. It's a super bulky number 6. It is machine washable not to exceed 86 degrees Fahrenheit on delicate cycle. It's dryable also on a delicate cycle using low heat. Do not iron or press and do not dry clean. This calls for an 8mm hook, but I used a 6.5. And I don't think you can see that here. I also needed a pair of scissors for this project. So to begin with, we will need to make a slip knot. Insert your hook into the loop. Now we're going to chain 52 stitches. To chain, you yarn over, pull it through the loop. That's your chain 1. Yarn over, pull it through the loop. That's chain 2. Yarn over, pull it through the loop. That's chain 3. And you will do this until you have 52 chains. Now that we have 52 chains, we are going to skip the first 2 chains and double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. Then we are going to skip 1 chain and double crochet into the 2nd chain from the hook. And then we will double crochet into this skipped chain. So that we're going to go back 1 and double crochet into that skipped chain. This creates our cross stitch, the X. So we're going to skip the next chain and double crochet into the 2nd chain from the hook. And then double crochet into our skipped chain again. Skip a chain, double crochet into the 2nd chain from the hook. Then double crochet into our skipped chain. We're going to do this across our chain. We should have 50 stitches at the end of this chain. Now we are at the end of row 1, where there will be 2 stitches left. We will place 1 double crochet into each of those 2 stitches. Now we chain 2 and turn our work. This chain 2 counts as our first stitch, so we will place a double crochet into the next stitch. Now we're going to skip a stitch and double crochet into the 2nd stitch from our hook. Then we're going to double crochet into our skip stitch. These cross stitches should line up directly above the cross stitches from our previous row. So skip a stitch, double crochet into the next, double crochet back into that skipped stitch, skip a double crochet and double crochet into the next stitch. Now we're going to double crochet back into that skipped stitch. We'll do this to the end of our row. At the end of the row, we will have 2 stitches remaining where we will place 1 double crochet into each of those 2 stitches. Then we are going to chain 2 and turn our work. I did this for 66 rows. That was the perfect length for my arms and my hands to fit nicely into the pockets. So you can do this for 66 rows, and I'll meet you at the end. At the corner, we've already placed our final double crochet. We're going to chain 1 and place 3 single crochets into this corner stitch. Now we're going to work down the long side of our shawl, and we're going to place 2 single crochets at the end of each row. And we'll do this all the way down to the next corner. At that next corner, you will place 3 single crochets into the corner stitch, and then 1 single crochet working along the end of our shawl. Once you reach the corner, you will place 3 single crochets into that corner and work down the other long edge of the shawl, placing 2 single crochets into the end of each row. You will do that all the way around your shawl until you meet your first single crochet where you will join with a slip stitch. Here we join to our first single crochet, chain 1, and into this corner stitch we are going to place 3 single crochets and place a single crochet into each single crochet around the shawl while placing 3 single crochets into each corner. After you have gone around your shawl with single crochets, chain 1 and cut your thread. Here you can work in your ends. And then we will start work on the pockets. This is one end of your work, your shawl. Here we are going to figure out how big you want your pockets and kind of where you want to place them. I think 19 chains is a good width for my pocket. Because this is difficult yarn to identify where my chains are, I've marked every other chain with a stitch marker. Now I am going to place a double crochet in the 3rd chain from my hook. Then I am going to skip a chain and double crochet into the next chain. Then I am going to put a double crochet into that skipped chain. This is the same stitch we used on the shawl itself, the cross stitches. It's the same pattern. You skip a stitch, double crochet into the next, then you double crochet into the skip stitch. Do that until there are 2 chains left on your row here, and you will place a double crochet into each of those final 2 chains, and then you will chain 2 and turn your work. Here we are at the beginning of row 2 for our pocket. Double crochet into that first stitch, skip a stitch, double crochet into the next, then double crochet into the skipped stitch. Again, we are lining these cross stitches above the cross stitches from the previous row. Skip a stitch, double crochet into the next, then double crochet into the skip stitch. Do this until you get to the last 2 stitches on your row, where you will place 1 double crochet into each of those stitches. Chain 2, turn your work. I did this for 8 rows. My pocket is 8 rows high, and I will meet you when you get to that point. Here are the final double crochets of this last row on the pocket. There we have 8 rows. Now I want the corners of my pocket to be a little more squared, so I'm going to chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, and another single crochet into that same corner stitch. Then I'm going to put 2 single crochets into the ends of each row down the side of my pocket. You can see where these single crochets belong as you go. 2 single crochets into the end of each row. Then you will need to identify where your corner stitch is and place 1 single crochet, chain 1, and another single crochet into that same corner stitch. Then you will put 1 single crochet into each stitch across the bottom of your pocket until you get to the other corner, where again you will place 1 single crochet, chain 1, and 1 single crochet into the same corner stitch. Do this all the way around until you get to your first single crochet. That's where you will slip stitch to join, chain 1, and cut your yarn. I left a very long tail on my yarn so that I could use it to sew my pocket onto the shawl. I will meet you once we get there. Here's our final single crochet, and here is where we slip stitch to our first single crochet at the beginning of this round. Chain 1 and pull that really long tail and cut your thread. I pulled far more than I needed, but that's okay. So I took the end of my shawl and my pocket, and I kind of counted how many crosses I had across the end of my shawl and figured out where I wanted my pocket placed. And I just centered my pocket. I think it was 7, my pocket edges were 7 cross stitches from each edge into the center. So I took stitch markers And I just attached my pocket to the shawl so I could sew it on. I was able to use my crochet hook to sew the pocket onto the shawl. And I just weave the yarn in and out of the stitches, making sure to catch the shawl stitches and the pocket stitches as I worked around the pocket. I went around 3 sides, and then I worked my yarn in, sewed in the edges, again using the crochet hook. I did the same with the other pocket at the other end of the shawl. Be careful and make sure that you have your pockets on the same side of the shawl and not on the back side of it. So this is how I made my pocket shawl. I hope you enjoyed my tutorial. Thank you for watching.